Great, thank you. Nice to see all of you again. Great to be back here in Brighton at MacAd UK MacAduck. Since last year, I've actually relocated to the UK, so I'm a resident of London now. I came home from this conference, was home for just a few days, collected my wife and my youngest child, and we moved straight back to London. So it's been a great year. I'm still really enjoying the transition. There's most things between the US and the UK is quite an easy transition. Lots of things are familiar and similar. There's a few things that are just very, very different. I'm still very self-conscious and unsure about how to pronounce the word water. Something like Jack just asked me if I wanted a bottle of water. And I'm not sure if there's any consonants in that phrase, but there seems to be plenty of vowels. But it's been nice. I work at Kanji. I didn't do an introduction slide. I thought, I'm talking about AI. Maybe we should use AI, right? So if we ask Siri here, you know, who is Weldon Dodd? Well, it's not very helpful. It just gives my contact card. If you wanted to email or phone me, I suppose you could find out. But it turns out we could ask Siri to reach out to ChatGPT and ask, tell me more about Weldon Dodd. And because I've asked it, it won't prompt for the permission to go to ChatGPT. But if we do that, sure enough, ChatGPT knows a little bit about me. Some of it's right. Some of it's not. My title's wrong. It changed a few months ago. To be honest, I have a hard time keeping up with my title changes, so the fact that ChatGPT isn't current doesn't surprise anyone. But it's got a few things right. I did start my career at the University of California, where I managed a Mac lab and a Next lab. I've been doing this for a little while. There's some other details in here that make me sound a bit more impressive maybe than I actually am, but I'll take it, right? So it's good. It knows a bit about me. If you ask my colleagues who I am, the one thing that they'll say is that I'm a nerd. Now, I kind of wear that as a badge of honor. I'm not entirely sure what that means. So, if we ask, what is a nerd? Okay, a person who is intellectual, obsessive, okay, a bit, yeah, introverted, definitely, lacking social skills, okay, fair. I'd like to think I have some, but maybe it could be better. And if you ask again, like, what kinds of things do nerds like? Well, okay, the local model doesn't know the answer to that question, so I've had this issue a couple times where my mouse disappears. So let's try again. We've got a mouse cursor now. We can ask ChatGPT to answer that question about what do nerds like. Well, and there's a few things that kind of jump out. Technology, yeah, definitely like technology, video games, RPGs, tabletop games, including Dungeons and Dragons. There it is. So yeah, I am a nerd. I'll take that one. So similarly, AI. What is AI? We could ask Siri again. What is AI? And we get a nice, concise answer. A bunch of different computational systems that can perform tasks associated with learning, reasoning, problem solving, okay? I'm particularly interested in Apple Intelligence for this talk, right? There's lots to know about AI, but for this audience and for us and for myself, I'm particularly interested in Apple Intelligence. So this combines the power of generative models with your personal context. We'll explore that a little bit more. To deliver personal intelligence, designed to understand language and images and simplify tasks and do all these things. So it's quite exciting. Now, from the title of the talk, right, it's a bit general. There's lots to know about AI. There's lots of people who know loads more than I do about AI generally. But I'm going to focus a lot of my comments on Apple Intelligence and how it works on device and with private cloud compute and some of these third-party providers to help us out. Now, we ran the Jason Snell, x6colors.com, ran the Apple Enterprise Report Card Survey again this year. We've done it 5 years now, and so we have some really interesting sort of historical data about what admins think about the state of Apple and being an Apple admin in the enterprise now. And one thing that we've done, if you're familiar with this, Jason does a survey generally where he asks pundits and technology writers and journalists general questions about Apple. And that runs a little bit earlier in the year, and then we follow that up with a survey that's targeted at Apple admins. And most of the questions are the same, right? If you look at the general survey, the questions are always the same every year. For the enterprise survey, we've done something a little different. Most of the questions are the same every year, but we add a few. We change some of the questions each year for something topical. So last year it was Apple Vision Pro, right? This year it was Apple Intelligence that seemed to be a topical question to ask. And a couple interesting things. We asked people, okay, are you comfortable with running Apple Intelligence on device with private cloud compute or integrating with third parties, and or not at all? And if you look at this, people are generally comfortable with Apple Intelligence, right? They're eager to use it, and they see some value with it. They're comfortable using it. 80% of respondents are good with everything that Apple does. And there's just that 20% or so that has some questions around, okay, what does it mean to integrate with third parties? And then we also asked, do you find AI useful? And again, like over half of respondents say, yeah, I see some value in using AI features in my job, right? I think there's lots of nuance to explore there about how comfortable am I and what specifically do I want AI to do to assist me in my job. I'm very happy to ask ChatGPT questions about specific bash functions or Python functions and get some quick answers to maybe the syntax of a command I don't use very often. I'm a little less comfortable with having it write out a whole script, right, and just pushing that straight into production. But somewhere in between, I'm happy to use it. So a lot of this hinges around Apple's promises around private cloud compute. The idea here is that, okay, there's things that, while the device is very capable, the M series of chips are highly optimized to run AI workloads, right? We have local models that we can do. And you saw earlier, I could ask Siri some questions. I could get answers locally. Other questions that required general knowledge, right? It would ask, do you want to use ChatGPT to answer this question? But this private cloud compute option allows Apple to proxy these requests out to either their own servers or out to third parties and maintain privacy of your data, right? To anonymize the request, to reduce the amount of data that you're sending to just what's essential to get an answer to the question, and remove some of the surrounding context that might identify you personally, whatnot. And so here's a diagram of what that might look like. And the piece that's really interesting here is that third-party privacy gateway that sits in between your device and Apple's private cloud compute resources and the third-party integrations. So it's that step where it's taking your request and filtering it down, removing some of the surrounding context to further anonymize the request and make sure that you're not leaking confidential information into a system that could track you and identify who you are, or could piece together well, you've just asked me about, I don't know, the market value of a certain industry, and now you've asked me a follow-up question about who the top competitors are and whatnot, and I can begin to paint a picture of maybe what you're working on or the project you have. All that's been separated and anonymized so that Apple can't put the pieces together, and certainly like a third-party provider like ChatGPT can't put that together unless you choose to do that, okay? So you'll notice throughout my demonstration today, I do have a ChatGPT account. I've logged into it and associated it with Apple Intelligence so that the things that I do will be associated with my ChatGPT account, but I have opted into that and turned that on explicitly. Okay. So what does Apple Intelligence do? There's a lot here with text. The writing tools that are available to help you refine what you've written, do proofreading, spell check, all those essentials or foundational kinds of things. But it can also write summaries and bullet points and rewrite into different styles, things like this. So let's take a look and try some of this. So I've got the Notes app open. I know this is a bit small, right? But let's make this bigger. This is the synopsis, whatever, that I submitted for this talk. So if I select the paragraph in the contextual menu here under Writing Tools, I've got some options to, I could proofread and revise and all this, but I could try to make it more professional, right? And it will rewrite this instead of going on a quest and some of these D&D references that I dropped in. It removes most of that, embark on a journey, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't like that as well, so I'll just go back. I could also do some things like, summarize this, and I'll come up with a much shorter little sentence here that explains what this session is about, okay? There we go. What else can we do? I think, again, I'll select the whole paragraph, Writing Tools, and I can create key points. And I thought this is quite good generally when I've looked at this in the past. So the topic in a sentence, what it covers in just a sentence, and who the audience is. That's quite nice, right? Did that automatically. You can also do some other cool things too, like if I create a new note, my friend Armin, right, was a little skeptical about participating in the enterprise report card this year. And so if I wanted to, I could go to Writing Tools and choose Compose from the bottom here. And I could say, write an impassioned plea to my friend Armin to participate. Oh, it corrected Armin, huh? Let's fix that. In the Apple, typing in front of people is surprisingly hard. Okay, if I give it a prompt like that, and it will think on it for a little bit and try to put together something, and it comes up with, let's take a look, right? Well, it's very polite at the beginning. Dear Armin, hope this finds you well, heartfelt plea. Your insights shaped by your unique experiences and sharp perspective could truly make a difference. That is definitely true, right? So it's done a good job here of writing a letter for me. Now, if I sent this to Armin, he would know that I've not written it, right? So maybe it wouldn't be successful in convincing him, but it's certainly a start and maybe something I could work with. So if we go back to our list here, some other nice things that it does is it does some automatic summaries in a few places with notifications, messages, mail. I find these quite handy. They have created some issues at times. I'll mention the BBC later. But it also created a problem for myself. I was recently on holiday in Italy, and I got this message. I included the chase notification just to establish that, not how much I paid for a piazzetta in Rome, but the fact that I was truly on holiday and I got this. It turned out, so just so you understand what happened, I wasn't fired and then rehired. There was a virtual expense card that had been created that I was using temporarily, and the need for it was over, and so the finance team had closed the virtual expense card, which was named with my name so they could keep track of it, right? So it summarized that message down that the expense card, Weldon Dodd, has been terminated to Weldon has been terminated. It did cause a moment of panic, right? A very short moment, but still nonetheless something to be aware of. Apple Intelligence can also work with images. So there's Genmoji. You can create emoji, create them for you to drop into messages and other places. Image Playground you can use in a few different contexts. And so, if we just look at this really quick, I've got Image Playground open, and you can give it a prompt, something like, a castle with a dragon overhead, and it will generate some ideas for you. You can click through the options and see if there's one that you like. You can make some suggestions around the style, and it can change it to, say, a sketch, and it'll redo the image in a slightly different style. And then you could drop that in and use it in your presentations or send it in a message or do different things. You can have it create images of people as well. It does rely on having the people identified in your photos library. And I don't have my photos library on my work laptop, so it's not something I can demonstrate here. But if you have people tagged and their name associated with their images, right, you can then make a reference and say, make an image of Ulrich on horseback riding through the countryside in Denmark, right? And it would try to use Ulrich's likeness to do that if I had him tagged there. Okay. The image wand is actually surprisingly cool, I think. If we look at, let's see if iPhone mirroring will behave here. It only works on iPhone and iPad, but if you're in Notes, and again, if I can find my mouse, okay. If you click on the pen tools here and the image wand, you just circle an area like this, and it'll ask about creating an image. So it's looked at the text above in the note and created an image from the text that's nearby the blank space where I asked it to make an image, right? So cool stuff. It's certainly fascinating. I don't know, how much I would use it in work context, but still very, very cool. Okay. There's some other features that were announced last year at WWDC that we haven't seen yet. So Apple product knowledge is there for the most part, but you can find the edges, right, where it doesn't cover some of the product pieces, but some of it's quite good. You can do things like, how do I use, Genmoji in messages, let's say, and it will come back and give me some steps that I can follow to use that functionality. How do I turn on File Vault? And it will tell me where to go in system settings. If I ask it something a little more admin-y, like, how do I escrow the File Vault, how do I escrow the File Vault recovery key? Then The answer it gives here, maybe it's hard to see, the answer that it gives here is a little maybe not as helpful for someone who truly is managing all their Macs with an MDM, right? You might need a little more detail than this. But still, it's trying. So let's go back to where I was at. And what we haven't seen yet is the on-screen awareness or personal context, where it can answer a question like, hey, what time is my mother arriving? And it looks at mail to see the flight arrangements and messages to see who mom is and a few other things to piece it together. Swift Assist was a feature that was announced. It would be a coding tool that you use directly in Xcode to do more than just autocomplete, but help you, write functions in Swift and do some other things. We haven't seen that yet. And they also hinted at additional third-party providers beyond ChatGPT, but we haven't seen that yet either. So it's a bit unusual to announce things and have a whole year go by without seeing it, but here we are. You might have seen the TV ad that ran for a while with Bella Ramsey, where she was using the on-screen awareness and personal context to do some very cool things, but it's not been made available yet, so they've pulled the ad. What is happening behind the screen? Not this screen. As I was building the presentation, right, I did promise D&D references, and as I went along and I found more and more AI things to add, I found less room for D&D things, but not behind the DM screen like this, but behind the computer screen. A few different things. When you turn Apple Intelligence on, it will then download the models that it's going to use to your device. And so you might see this message. This has popped up with some of the Dot updates for macOS and iOS. New models are added to the operating system with the operating system release. And so you might notice this. It's a bit hard to capture, and there's no real mechanism to monitor this, but you can take a look at the on-device models on macOS quite easily. They're in this folder here. So I put some terminal commands in a note here so I could get to them easily. So if we take a look in this folder, you can see the list of different directories, really, that contain the models that Apple uses for Apple Intelligence. The one for the image generation is here with the, sorry, not there, but I can't see my mouse. Okay. The UAF visual here, this directory here contains all the models for the image generation tools that I've just shown you. But you can take a look at this. You can see just one little detail, I guess. If I add the long list here, you can see the dates when these have been modified. So some of them just this week. I have not yet done the .5 release of Sequoia, so I'm not sure if there's any changes to the models that come with that, but that's just come out in the last couple days. All these files are SIP protected, so there's not a whole lot you can do with them. There's not much you can do to inspect them or look at them unless you disable SIP, which I wouldn't recommend. There are 2 user plists that you can inspect to see if Apple Intelligence has been enabled and turned on. So the first one is in the global preferences plist. You can see there are some keys that tell you if Apple Intelligence is enabled and if the ChatGPT integration is enabled. If we take a look at these, again, I've grabbed the terminal commands here, so I don't have to do this. I don't have to type it all out. You saw how much I struggled with typing earlier. The answer that this gives you here is just 0, which maybe counterintuitively means that it's on. okay? The reason why this command is so long is because this key is stored in this big plist, this global preferences plist. The Apple Intelligence stuff is in a section that's base 64 encoded, a separate plist, and there's binary data inside that plist that is actually an XML array that has a single key with a single value, right? So these are things that kind of just make me chuckle, right? But here we go, binary encoding of an array with a single key with a single integer inside of it, right? It seems like there could be simpler ways to do this, but there we go. The other one that you can look at is in the cloud subscription features plist here. So this will return this account ID and true or false if it's enabled. This account ID, it turns out, is related to if you're signed into an Apple account or not. So if I look at the plist for mobile me accounts for Apple ID, that's the ID of the account that I'm signed into currently. Generally, you'll just get back a single value. If you have multiple mail accounts that are configured that talk to Apple, you'll have multiple IDs in this plist, and so mapping between the account that you see here and the account ID that's in the cloud features plist we looked at first that tells you if it's using Apple Intelligence or not. That can get a little tricky, but there's some resources I'll show you at the end where you can look through and figure out how to parse the list of account IDs and find the ones that's related to the Apple ID. So that it's another way to kind of check and verify or inspect if Apple Intelligence is being used. Okay. One of the other tools that you have available is the intelligence report. And so this is something that the end user can generate to see what's been happening, specifically what data has been flowing off device into private cloud compute, and if it's being proxied on to ChatGPT. So I generated one of these yesterday just to have something to look at. And so if I pull this up, we can take a look. You can see a few things here. Okay, here's a request where it's gone out to OpenAI, ChatGPT, for general knowledge. And if we read through, we can see I've asked it some of the similar questions, like who is Weldon Dodd in my testing, and what do nerds like up here, right? So you can see this. Now, useful to know that this feature is available in system settings. If you go into the privacy section, there's an Apple Intelligence report item you can click on and generate the report for the last 7 days or whatever period. It seems to be a feature that only the users can use. It's not something that you as an admin can generate or look at, probably for the best, right? Because the query terms that you type in there are stored in that file as well as the results, and it could be a bit invasive, right, to be able to remotely inspect that file. But still, there is a need potentially to manage, restrictions. I think is a bit difficult, but that's what the configuration profiles are called, right? It's a restrictions profile. But we do want to manage this, and it raises the question: well, why do we want to manage this? From a business standpoint, right? If we're sending data to a third party, we want to know how it's being used. And if I am in a, say, highly regulated business where it's potentially very damaging to the firm I work with, if customer data were to get out to a third party, it's particularly important. I want to know how it works. I want to understand it. I want to understand the risk so I can explain it to my colleagues and my leadership, right, and show that I'm being a good steward over the technology that I manage or help implement. There's a couple high-profile examples where that kind of highlight some of the concerns. Going back to Dungeons and Dragons again, just briefly, like, artwork is a really important part of, what makes tabletop gaming important. Like, I grew up with Larry Elmore, the painting here, and that imagery and that artwork is a really important part of what makes D&D D&D. And there's a huge concern in the gaming community that if publishers use AI art, right, it's reduced something, it's lessened something really unique and creative and powerful about that hobby. And so, they want artists to be honored and to be able to make money for doing what they do and not have someone who's trained technology to mimic the style of an artist, to make money off of work that they didn't do. Another example is like trademarked or copyrighted material. So this is a mind flare. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3, you've seen this. If you've played D&D, you know about this. But this is a character, a monster, an idea that is unique to Dungeons and Dragons. It was created specifically. It's intellectual property of, Hasbro now, Wizards of the Coast, and it's not public domain, right? And so they're very keen to hold on to their trademark material in the same way that you would, right? If you have unique intellectual property for your company, you don't want it to just get out where people could use it and not understand where it comes from and what the rules are around using this sort of trademarked and copyrighted material. Some other examples, BBC here in the UK were concerned about the way some of the news notifications that were being sent out were being summarized, a bit like my experience with having the notifications summarized in a way that didn't convey the intent that was behind the message. The BBC was concerned about the way that news articles were being summarized was changing the meaning or some of the nuance or the intent of what their headlines were saying. They've had some discussions with Apple about that, and Apple's made some adjustments. The New York Times also has sued ChatGPT. It's a little unclear where that lawsuit is going, if they're going to be successful or not. But their concern was that if you ask ChatGPT about a topic and what does the New York Times have to say about it, it would spit out essentially the identical contents of the original New York Times article, right? And so there's this opportunity for LLMs to memorize content as part of the way that they learn. And so the potential concern is if I have a set of data, maybe a report that shows who our most valuable customers are, and it's got some things in there, it's really tempting to shove that CSV, let's say, and paste it into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it for me. Because that's a lot less work than pasting it into Excel or using that to analyze the data and write functions and queries and stuff. I could just use natural language and ask ChatGPT to do it. The concern is, if I paste all that customer data into ChatGPT, do they now retain that data and use it to train their model? Has it been incorporated into their model where someone else could ask ChatGPT a question and get details about my confidential customer information, right? Okay, so that's why we care about this and why we want to look at it. Well, these are the restrictions that are available. I'm very, very confident about this list, but not entirely 100% confident, right? Because if you go to the MDM documentation, there's a section for Apple Intelligence reports, and it lists most of these keys, but some of them, like the personalized handwriting results, where you can write in your own handwriting with an Apple Pencil on an iPad and have it look at that text and even recreate text in your handwriting. That seems to use Apple Intelligence, but it's not in that section. Some of the other ones on here I marked in gray at the bottom, just because, again, they're kind of on the edges. The allow assistant restriction just turns off Siri, okay? So it doesn't really turn off Apple Intelligence like the other features, Genmoji, some of these other things would be available, but being able to ask Siri things would be off if you touch that one. And then the other one at the bottom, math notes, which is where you can handwrite math in the Notes app on an iPad with Apple Pencil and have it do sums and calculations for you. That is controlled with a declaration. So there's a DDM declaration for math notes, separate from the restrictions profile where you see most of these other keys. Okay? The only one on here that's not a Boolean is the allowed external intelligence workspace IDs. I don't have a real-world example of this. I've not been able to find one in the field, but the intent behind it is that when there are multiple third-party AI platform providers available, that you could allow list certain ones, right? Today, there's only ChatGPT. You could allow just your ChatGPT instance. Apparently, if you have an enterprise account, this workspace ID is available inside of the enterprise account, and then you could paste it, put it into the key here for the restrictions profile and specify it. I don't have an enterprise ChatGPT account, so I wasn't able to verify for myself. I didn't know anyone else who had one. So there we go. Those are the restrictions that we have. There's also, in the Apple Enterprise, I forgot the title of it now, using Apple devices on enterprise networks, something like that. The support article that I'm speaking of. That's been updated. There's a new section there for Apple Intelligence, Siri, and Search, where it lists the 4 host names that are used to receive these queries from Apple Intelligence. And so, for example, I'm going to go back to notes here. You could find ways to block these. If simple way would be to modify Etsy hosts, right? So you're going to have to watch me type again. But, if we modify the, okay, this is even harder. I've done it. Okay. If I paste, these host names into my Etsy host file and save it, right? Now we could do something like, the GlowBest doesn't work with terminal, but, tell me about Dungeons and Dragons, a general knowledge kinds of question. Yeah, sure, I want you to use ChatGPT. Something's wrong. Please try again later. Okay, so I've effectively blocked the ability for Siri and Apple Intelligence to reach out and send these requests along through the private cloud compute flow. We have the sudo timeout set to, I can't talk and type, sorry. We have the sudo timeout set to 0, right, for safety reasons, security reasons. So I've got to do that again. So clearing that out, it should work again as we go. So we'll go back here. What are we doing at Kanji around Apple Intelligence and around AI generally? I'll take a few minutes here to tell you a bit. So if we look at Kanji, well, okay, unfortunate timing, but here we go. I'll log back in. If we look in the library, which is where you configure all your controls and setup and things that you have, we do have restrictions profiles. So if I pull this up, we've got one built here for Apple Intelligence being blocked. And if I scroll down, Okay, in the list of all the different categories of items you can restrict, we've got all the Apple Intelligence items grouped together, so you can look at them, and here's all the keys that we've just discussed. So you can go through and decide what you want to do. For the demo here, I've chosen a rather draconian approach and just blocked everything, okay? But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but hey, it will help with the demo. So in kanji, oops. Let's just do this. I've left some tabs open. We'll go to the blueprint here. Oh. Thought we were all good. So the blueprint is where you bring all of this together. So I've configured all my library items. Not this restrictions profile, but apps I want to install, security controls, other configuration profiles, all those things are in my library. Now I pull them together into an assignment map. And so this is a visual representation of my deployment. I can take items, for example, I don't know, let's say I'm a Microsoft shop. I can grab all the items I've configured related to Microsoft in my library and drop those into my map and apply them to either all devices, like that's what this first group here is. Let me do it this way. All devices, and these other blocks that we see, they're scoped to particular groups or sets of devices or some criteria that's important here. Jack, a quick check on time. I'm good till 25 after. So I'm slightly over. Okay, I misunderstood the timing. Well, I understand I'm between you and lunch, so I will finish up quickly then. Apologies. So I'm going to just cancel the changes, but show you here at the end of this map, we've created a block for ChatGPT and AI restrictions. And so the way that you can make this work is say, okay, look, I've set up a group in my IDP for people that are allowed to use AI tools. We've created an exception security group or whatever. And any users that I drop in there, they'll get ChatGPT. And if they're not in that exception group, then I'm going to apply that restrictions profile that I've just created. Of course, this would layer with any other restrictions that were applied earlier or because they belong to other groups, right? But this would be layered on, and I would block these Apple Intelligence features. So ways that we can do it, a couple other things, just where we're using AI in a Prism, the reporting tool. There's this Ask Kanji Intelligence feature here. And so I've got some pre-built suggestions, like what are the most recent versions of Zoom installed across my fleet, and it will parse that query. We've built a model to connect that to the underlying data and what we know about devices and application inventory, and it will build the report for me and provide the answer directly here in the chat, but also a link so that I can view that report. It's picking the fields and arranging things for me in the report builder. So that's quite handy. In our support chat, if you ask a question, like how do I restrict Apple Intelligence, we're using a large language model that we've trained on our support articles and our knowledge base to try to find the answer to that question for you and respond directly with information that you can use. And of course, if that didn't answer your question, the next step is you talk to an actual human being. We're very proud of the fact that at Kanji, our support team is staffed by Apple admins who have hands-on experience managing devices with MDM, and so they'll be able to give you, good instructions, right? So if we scroll here, right, we've got a long answer about how to use this and where different things can be found inside the app. There's loads more that we're very interested in. We see lots of potential with AI for anomaly detection, being able to train it on a large set of data and say, this is normal behavior. And when we see something that's not normal, we could respond to it and do a few other things. So quickly to wrap up, some acknowledgments. Thanks to Jason for the enterprise report card. Rich Troughton has some good articles about the restriction keys and how they work. Bob had some good stuff around detecting if Apple AI is on, and Joel Bruner had a great answer on that as well. So this will be posted so you can see it. And more from Apple. It's available about private cloud compute and Apple Intelligence. We do have a giveaway at our booth. So come by and get your badge scanned so that you can sign up to win a Lego giveaway. Again, things that nerds like, Lego and D&D together. It's amazing. And if you want to learn more about Kanji, if you stop by our booth, you can also go to signup.kanji.io. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.